Hi, my name is John Kimani. I am a Bing developer evangelist at Microsoft. Today, I am going to give you a basic introduction to Bing Maps development and how to simply add maps into your application. To get us started, we're going to ask ourselves a very basic question. Why Bing Maps? We know that 80% of business data today has a location component to it. This means that there's a lot of geographical content that is integrated into the business data that we go through on a daily basis. Despite this, the typical way we experience this data is through columns and rows of information. It could be through a database, a custom-made enterprise solution, or simply a spreadsheet that is presented to us. What we need is an easier way of visualizing and analyzing all this geographical data. So let's take a look at some of the solutions we could develop using Bing Maps. Taking a look at web portals, the different types of web portals that present different information to us. For example, it could be a site locator that simply maps out retail outlets for a large manufacturing chain. It could be commercial, industrial, um, mapping of various locations. It could also be a government trying to map out various disaster and response portals, or it could simply be an application that brings information about people and resources together in asset tracking. It could also be a business intelligence application that is simply trying to add maps into the daily, day-to-day user dashboards. All this in a bid to present the data, the geographical data, in a way that is easier for the user to visualize and analyze. So what are some of the advantages you get by using Bing Maps? We pride ourselves at Bing Maps as to having very high quality imagery. A basic view of a location is presented to you using a road view. If you wanted better imagery of the same location, what we do is switch to an aerial view, which gives us a 90-degree view of the same location taken from above. If you wanted an even better view of the same location, you could switch to the bird's eye view, which gives us an angled view 45 degrees of the same location. What this does is that it helps us to view the landmarks even better. We can pick out features that make the landmark stand out. We could pick out the colors of the landmarks. We could be able to tell the size of the building, estimate, and so this helps us to find our locations even much easier. There are also some cool features that have been added onto Bing Maps, like Bing Maps Street Side, which basically is someone walking through a street holding a handheld camera, and all this data is then uploaded onto Bing Maps, and you get to experience the same location as if you're walking side by side with the person on the street. It gives you a 3D view of a location. It could be a stadium showing you the different gates, the different walls, different entry points. It could be a shopping mall, giving you an impression of the size of the various shopping avenues that you could get from there. Another feature that we have on Bing Maps is what we call the Microsoft Photosynth, which is a very cool way of uploading photos and visualizing photos. What this does is that gives you a panoramic view of a location. For example, it could be a photo taken from a hillside, a photo taken from the top of a building, and what you do is that you upload all these photos onto Photosynth, and Photosynth merges these photos into one continuous panoramic view that gives you a better impression of the location without sifting through um, a whole bunch of photos. This makes your experience as a user even much better. Another cool feature that we have on Bing Maps is what you call venue maps. Venue maps were released in Bing Maps in late of 2011. There are currently more than 3,000 venues worldwide mapped in more than 30 different countries. You can keep track of all these new venues from bing.com/maps. The idea behind venue maps is that we're not just trying to get you to a location, but once you get you to that location, how do you find the specific office, for example, that you're looking for? Some of the common venue types that you have are airports, casinos, shopping malls. There could be universities, colleges, there could be stadiums. So once you get to a university, for example, how do you find a specific lecture hall that you could be looking for? So all these features that have been combined into Bing Maps are geared at giving you, the developer, and your eventual end user of your application an amazing experience while using Bing Maps. So let's take an Let's go through an overview of the Bing Maps platform and see what kind of features are provided to you as a developer. So the Bing Maps platform has a number of features that make it stand out for you as a developer and make it easier for you to use. What you do first and foremost is provide you with a host of web APIs. There are basically two web APIs that you could use. The latest being the Bing Maps version 7 Ajax control, built on top of HTML5 and works on the PC, the Mac, and many mobile browsers. This API is the most widely used and the recommended API for most types of applications. There's also a Silverlight API available as well for you still doing Windows Phone 7 application, or you have a web application that relies heavily on Silverlight and you'd like to get Bing Maps into it. We also have mobile APIs, native APIs for Windows Phone, Android, and iOS. And all of these are built on top of the Bing Maps Ajax control, which makes it very easy for you to integrate into your application. We also have an SDK for those of you who are building Windows Store applications. Bing Maps is part of Windows 8, and there's a Bing Maps SDK that is built for exactly that. We also have web services, which are both REST and SOAP driven, which provide a number of functionalities, including things like geocoding, routing, just to name but a few. The REST services are the service of choice because they're newer and faster, and they have more features than the traditional SOAP-based service. Something else about Bing Maps is that it's designed for the enterprise. It makes it very easy for you to integrate Bing Maps into your applications. You could be using SharePoint, you could be using Dynamics, and this makes it very easy for you to add Bing Maps into these applications. We currently have global coverage on Bing Maps. We have data for all cities around the globe. In addition to that, we provide multiple support. We provide support for multiple languages. They currently stand at more than 100 languages. Bing Maps also gives you multiple device support, where whichever platform, whichever device that you're using, we have an API for it. Another advantage is that the way you view the maps on your phone, on your PC, and on the tablet is more or less the same, giving your end user the same experience. Something else about Bing Maps is that it was a fast cloud-based service that was introduced by Microsoft, and it's been tested over the years, and it's very stable. And well, it was actually used as a basis for the design for Windows Asia, so it's a tested and proven solution. So you don't have to worry about outages and all that. Once you reference or Bing Maps APIs, you guarantee that every time you make a call, you're going to get a response from the cloud-based service. Yep. So the advantage about Bing Maps is that it has a mapping. It's a mapping platform for every business application that you could think of. If you're using SQL Server, if you're using Silverlight in your applications, if you're using SharePoint in your organization, it's very easy to integrate into Bing Maps. Bing Maps is part of the Microsoft stack and integrates very, very well with other Microsoft products. There's a robust set of mapping, routing, geocoding, and spatial methods available for you, all this in the cloud. Something else about SQL Server, it has natively included support for spatial indexing. This means that we can optimize searches for anything that has latitude and longitude coordinates, basically geocodes. So you can store all this data into SQL Server very, very easily. There's also a mapping control available for SharePoint. We know that most customers have lists of data or data information on SharePoint. So when you drop a map control on that data, you can start rendering points on a map through SharePoint. The same experience it is achieved if you're using the Microsoft ERP suite, CRM suite. It's just the mapping control, and you're able to visualize your data using Bing Maps. So enough of all the features. So how do you as a developer benefit from Bing Maps? So from a developer perspective, it's all about APIs. So we have a stack of APIs available to you, from the Windows Store apps SDK to a Windows Presentation Foundation control. We have REST services, we have SOAP services, we have Silverlight controls available for you. and all these are geared into making your experience using Bing Maps much easier. So regardless of the client application that you're coming up with, it could be a Silverlight application, it could be a HTML5 application on the web, on the phone, using a PHP, Ruby, Python code behind. It could be an enterprise app that runs on SharePoint, on Dynamics. It's very easy for you to get Bing Maps into that application. And the advantage you get is that the middleware, what sits in between the Bing Maps APIs and controls and your application, common communication services that you're used to, and data formats, data exchange formats like XML, like JSON, which is very easy. Makes it very easy for you to plug the information coming from the APIs into your application. So it boils down to a very basic question for you as a developer: which API when? For example, you want to put a static map on your web page, so then what you need is a Bing Maps Ajax SDK. You want to use Silverlight, for example, in your application. What you need is the Bing Maps Silverlight control. So what you need to be able to do is determine right from the onset which kind of application you're coming up with, and then translate this mapping requirement into the appropriate API. And the advantage you have as a Bing Maps developer is that regardless of the application you're coming up with, there's going to be an API that is available for you. So how do you get started with Bing Maps as a developer? So the first thing you need to do is that you need to go over to bingmapsportal.com and create a Bing Maps account. So you click on the create button, you enter your account name. You need to sign in using a Windows Live ID. Windows Live ID could be an account from Outlook.com, Live.com, Hotmail.com, any of the accounts that are hosted on the Windows services. This will enable you to log on to bingmapsportal.com. Once you've filled out the form and you've clicked on save, then the next stage is crucial for you as a developer. What you need to do is that now you need to create a Bing Maps key. What this key does is that it's going to give you authentication on the Bing Maps server. So every time we make a request to our cloud-based service, we authenticate you using the key and the passphrase the key that we've provided for you. So the first thing you need to do is that you need to provide an application name. This could be anything you want. It's basically meant for your own information and to make it easier for you to manage your keys. Same thing with the application URL. That's basically put there for your own, as an optional value for your own information. Now we normally have three types of key types. We have an enterprise key, we have a basic key, and we have a trial key. An enterprise key is normally availed by request, and it's normally availed to those developers who are coming up with line of business applications that are going to be used within the organization. But for you as a developer, what you get is a basic key when you start in your development, and you need to decide right from the onset what kind of key you want to be using. So once you've provided all the information that is required, you need to select the application type that you're coming up with. It could be a Windows Metro style application, it could be a public website. So all this information is required right from the onset. So once you click on submit, your key will be generated and displayed right below the form. So every additional key that you create is going to be displayed at the bottom of the key creation form. So once you've gotten a key to use an application, you're ready to go. We just need to point out one interesting aspect about your account. Every time you log onto your account, we're going to give you what you call usage reports, and these usage reports are very crucial for our enterprise clients for keeping track of billing purposes. But for you as a basic user, the usage reports are going to be very useful for you. They'll help you keep track of the number of hits you're getting on your map. You could be able to tell the number of requests you're getting on a daily basis, and by category and by key. So if you've used your key in a number of applications, you can tell the number of hits that you're getting on that key. So once you've gotten this out of the way, then we're ready to get started with development using Bing Maps. So we know that we have a whole stack of APIs available to us as developers. So we're going to pick just two of those APIs and see how we could get these APIs into application. So the first category of applications we're going to be looking at are applications that use the Bing Maps JavaScript SDK. So how do you get started using Bing Maps development on JavaScript? So what you need is that you need to make a reference to the Bing Maps Ajax SDK. There's an interactive SDK that is provided for you online on Bing Maps portal /ISDK, and this gives you a feel of the SDK and the kind of responses you would get if you used it in your application. So why JavaScript? What we basically have under the hood is that the Ajax SDK uses JavaScript objects, methods, and events that allow you to display Bing Maps. And the advantage to this is that for you as a web developer, at some point in your web development process or career, you have used JavaScript in your application. So it's a very natural and intuitive language to use. So that is why most of the features are bundled into the Ajax SDK. The advantages to this are that you have no extra installations required on the client end. All you need to do is that you need to have JavaScript enabled on your browser and you're good to go. JavaScript integrates easily with other development aspects of your web application if you're coming up with a web application, and it also integrates very easily with other enterprise solutions that you could have bought from Microsoft, like SharePoint and Microsoft Dynamics. The biggest, probably what is the biggest advantage to all this is that the Ajax SDK has continuous development. There are lots of new features that are always added onto the SDK on a regular basis. So what are some of the features you get on the JavaScript Control SDK? So this SDK is, like we mentioned earlier, is based purely on JavaScript. The Control is designed on a modular framework to improve performance and make it very easy for you to add custom features and functionalities on demand. Some of the features we have on this include search. You could do requests for directions from point A to point B. You could be able to draw polygons of very complicated areas. An example is South Africa, where you have the small country Lesotho sitting in the center in the heart of South Africa, but is not actually part of South Africa. So these are very complicated polygons to draw, and you could do all this using JavaScript SDK. And there are lots of developer resources available for you out there, which makes it a very natural option for you as a developer. It also has most of the major features that we looked at earlier provided by Bing Maps, features like venue maps. You also get value-ons like real-time traffic overlays depending on the country that you're in, and it's very easy to add custom modules onto this control. It's a very natural choice for most developers. Another advantage you get with JavaScript is that it gives you multiple device support. So the way your maps are visualized on the phone, on the tablet, or on the PC, to the end user, they give him the same experience, which is very important. They don't get that feel that the maps look different on the phone, or they're presenting different information on the phone than they are on the PC. So it's a natural transition across the devices. So let's take a look at a sample Hello World application using the JavaScript SDK. So there are basically 3 steps into using this JavaScript SDK. The first step is you need to make a reference to the script source, which is a cloud-based service, which is the first thing you do. The second thing you need to do is that you need to create a JavaScript function that is basically going to load our map. You can notice that one of the values you ask for is credentials, and in this part we require you to fill out the Bing Maps key that you got from the Bing Maps portal. Once you've done this, you could add other map specific options like where do you want your map to be centered. You could provide the geocodes for a specific location. What map type do you want to load at the onset? It could be the road view, it could be an area view, it could be a bird's eye view. And then lastly, we provide the zoom level In this case, we're using Zoom 7 to the location that we want it to be centered on. And lastly, once you've gotten all this done, we need to specify a div on our HTML page that is going to load our map. And that basically it. Once we start our application, it's going to load our map for us, and we'll be able to get a basic feel of how Bing Maps would look like on our web page. So the integration process is very easy and natural for you as a web developer. The second category that we're going to be looking at is Bing Maps Windows Store application SDK. We know that most of you are already developing Windows 8 applications, and you've already gotten the experience of developing Windows 8 store applications. So how would you get maps into these kind of applications? So the first thing you need to do is that you need to set up your required development environment. You need Visual Studio 2012 to create an application for the Windows Store. If you do not have it already, you can download the Express version to get yourself started. You'll also need to install the Bing Maps Windows Store app SDK that includes all the libraries you need for adding Bing Maps to your application. We'll provide you with the download links at the end of this presentation, so that you can go to those links and get yourself some copies. If you have any extra tools that you're requiring for your application, then you need to get them in place before you start developing. So Bing Maps provides you with two options when it comes to Windows Store application. So we know that when you're coming up with Windows Store applications, you could either go the native way, or you could go the JavaScript control way. You could go the JavaScript way. So you could either use XAML as your main pages, or you could use HTML. So if you decide to go the XAML way, that would mean that you're developing applications using C++, C#, or Visual Basic. So this is what you call the native control. This control is written in C++, but is designed to be consumed by any native or managed Windows Store style application that is running using C#, C++, or Visual Basic. One of the unique features of this control is its client vector rendering capability and full hardware acceleration. So your map loads faster and it's very efficient. So it's very ideal for high performance application. The second category of applications that you could create are the HTML5 JavaScript applications. So the JavaScript control in this case is based on the Bing Maps Ajax Web Map control that we looked at earlier. So there's going to be a lot of intuitive and natural JavaScript that you're already used to. So majority of the documentation for this web control relates to this of the web control. So majority of the documentation for the web control relates to the Windows Store app JavaScript control as well. So you get most of the features that you had on the web control are going to be found on this Windows Store 8 JavaScript control. Lastly, if you need very specific services for your application, like geocoding, you need to reverse coding, the reverse geocoding, where you have an address and you need to get the geocodes, or when you have the geocodes and you need to get the address. We normally recommend the Bing Maps REST services for this. So the Bing Maps REST services can be easily accessed from your Windows Store application. These services provide a number of useful functionalities to the application without the need of loading an interactive map. So what you're doing is basically you're doing a HTTP query to our servers, and you get all the information that's required in XML or in JSON format. It becomes very easy to integrate into your application. So let's take a look at developing a basic Windows Store application that has a map in it. So the first thing we need to do is that we need to create a Windows Store project. Most of these steps you're probably already used to them, but for those who are starting Windows Store development today, this is how you'd go about it. So the first thing you need to do is open up your Visual Studio and create a new project. You need to select the desired language. In this case, we're going to be using C#. You need to select the Windows Store project type and a template that suits your kind of application. So if you looked at the zoomed in screenshot, you'll see that we're using Visual C#. and we're coming up with the Windows Store application. So we select the blank application that has the XAML, XAML as a development platform. Once you've done this, then the next thing we need to do is very crucial. We need to set the active solution platform. So this only applies when using the native Bing Maps SDK. You need to compile your application against each target platform and submit all three packages to the Windows Store. So if you're coming up with an application for Windows RT, for 32-bit architecture, and for the 64-bit architecture, then you need to compile your application against these three platforms. So you need to right click on your solution folder and select properties, go to your configuration properties, and under the platform column change the target platform that you're compiling for. So this is very important. The advantage is that the existence of these three packages is invisible to the end user. So the end user, once they go to the store to request for your application, they don't need to specify the platform that they're already on. Windows Store will automatically send them the correct package. So this only needs to be done at the development level. Once you've done this, then the next step is adding a reference to the Bing Maps SDK. So again, you right click on your references folder, you click on add reference, and then you scroll down to the Windows extensions, and there you will find our Bing Maps SDK that you need to make a reference to. Like we mentioned earlier, the Bing Maps SDK is developed using C++, so you'll also need to check the Microsoft Visual C++ runtime package. So this allows, we need these two references for us to get Bing Maps into applications. So once you've sorted out all this development environment, that we can get down into the actual development of our application. So the first thing we need to do is that we need to add Bing Maps on our XAML page. So you can see the outlined areas that have reference to the Bing Maps. So you open up the your XAML page where you want to include your Bing Maps. You add a reference to the Bing Maps API in the namespaces. You could either type this in, or you could simply drag and drop a control, the Bing Maps control, onto your real-time design page that will be presented to you. So the next thing you need to do is that you need to set out the grid area that is going to be hosting your map. You need to give a name to your map control, and once again, like you noticed earlier when you're doing the web application, you need to add your credentials into the application. So again, this Bing Maps key is the one that you got from the Bing Maps portal and needs to be added in your application in order for the cloud service to authenticate your application and provide you with the correct responses. Once you've done this and you run your application, then you'll notice that there's a mapping control that is already added onto your application page. So once you've done the basics of adding a map onto our application, we could then customize our map like we did on the JavaScript option. We could specify where you want to center your map. You could specify the zoom level and the map type that you want to load. It could be aerial, it could be a road view, it could be a bird's eye view. So all this is up to you, and this is optional information for customizing your map depending on the way you want to visualize it. So all these options are available to you as a Bing Maps developer. Another cool feature that you get on Windows 8 is what you call location capabilities. In order for your application to access the user's location via the Windows 8 location services, you must add the location services as a capability of your application in what you call the application manifest file. So if you double click on the application manifest, which is appx.manifest file, then you'll notice that it loads up the settings for you, and then you need to check the location capability on the application manifest so that you can be able to use the location services that are provided for you in Windows 8. If you do not do this, then you'll not be able to get a user's location from your application. Let's see how then you'd call these location capabilities and integrate them into Bing Maps. So we know that you already have a map on our application. So the next step that we need to do is that we need to first get the user's location, and then secondly show the user's location onto the map. So the first thing we need to do is that we need to call the geolocator service, which tracks every time the user changes their location and sends us the user's location coordinates. It gives us the latitude and longitudes. Once we have these geocodes, then we set these geocodes onto our map using a pushpin. A pushpin basically is like the natural pushpin that you'd probably have on an information board. It helps you to specify a location on a map, to pinpoint a location on a map, and tell that this is where the user is located. So it's a very basic process. All you need is the geolocator class and methods that will find the user's location, and you'll be able to map out this location onto your application. So now we know that you could we have the Bing Maps Windows Store SDK, and it provides you with multiple options for getting maps into your Windows Store application. Another feature that you could use in your application are the Bing Maps REST services. Like we mentioned earlier, these REST services allow you to get a lot of features into your application without actually loading the full map on your application. So the Bing Maps REST services provide you with geocoding, which basically consists of taking an address and returning its coordinate on the map. These services also provide you with reverse geocoding, which consists of taking a coordinate and returning the relative address information. It also provides you with routing, which could be used to calculate driving, walking, transit directions between locations on the map. It could also provide you with static imagery, or for example, all you want is a single non-interactive image of a map. For example, you want to specify a location like Lagos, and all you want is that location provided to you as an image that you simply load on your web page. So this is the service that you need to call. It also gives you traffic incidents and other nice cool features for countries where they're supported. Like we mentioned earlier, the REST services support more than 100 languages, and the fact that it's a cloud-based service means that it's extremely fast and stable. Um, the Again, it's a very lightweight service. It supports both XML and JSON, and the advantage of using JSON is that your responses are 20 to 30% smaller and faster than if you're using XML. So it's a very important service for someone who's doing routing and geocoding on an application. So let's see an example of how to get the REST services into your native code application. If you're coming up with a Windows Store application that requires geocoding or routing or reverse geocoding. So what you need to do is that you need to make a request to the REST services provided by Bing Maps Cloud Services. So majority of the functionality in the Bing Maps REST services can be accessed using standard HTTP GET request. In most cases, the request that we're making with nothing more than a URL. So you can write a simple method for making an asynchronous request, and then you pass the response. Um, so this is a very basic way of calling the REST service and getting a JSON or XML response from it. So from our code here, you can see the part where we make a geocode request to the Bing Maps REST services. So we are requesting for a location, and as is already the norm, we're providing a Bing Maps key into this. So it's an asynchronous request, and we wait for our JSON data to be relayed back to us. So once you get the JSON response, we are able to transcode this data and put it on our application. So it's a very easy way of getting very crucial mapping information like geocoding, like routing, onto our application. So we've looked at basic ways of getting um, of using the APIs that are provided by Bing Maps. We know that there are other APIs that you could play around with, like we saw in the stack of APIs provided by Bing Maps. You could come up with Windows Presentation Foundation application, and you'll have an API for it. You could come up with an Android app, an iOS application, a BlackBerry application, and all these. You have a way of getting maps into all these applications. So it's just a question of knowing the kind of application you're coming up with, and then selecting the right API, selecting the right API for you. So there are lots of resources available to you as a developer out there. One of the resources I would like us to look at is the Codeplex Bing Maps modules project. This is an open source project where developers can share usable modules of code that add functionality to the Bing Maps Ajax control, and then the Bing Maps JavaScript SDK for Windows Store apps. So like we mentioned earlier, the design of the Bing Maps SDK is very modular. So it makes it very easy for you to add your own custom modules, your own custom functionality. And the Codeplex modules project has added more than 15 modules as you speak. Uh, so some of these modules provide features such as heat map overlays, drawing tools, and push pin clustering, which are very cool features to have in your application, especially if you're doing a public website or integrating into SharePoint or um, as an application that has a web front end into it. There are also other resources available to you as a developer. I would recommend that you get started. Go to microsoft.com/maps. This is a very good starting point for you as a developer. There are also more resources available to you. Um, we have an MSDN portal with all the mapping APIs and how to get these APIs into your application. We have a discussion. We have a forum online that is dedicated to Bing Maps that you could log into and have a look at. I also recommend the JavaScript Interactive SDK. This interactive SDK will give you the possibility and a chance to play around with the SDK and get a feel of how the map is going to feel like, is going to look like once you've added it into your application. So um, jump onto the resources and start developing with Bing Maps and get maps into your application. Thank you very much. Um, in case you'd like to get in touch with me, here are my contacts. Feel free to drop me an email. My Twitter handle is at Kimani Gakingo, which is presented. You could also follow us at blogs.msdn.com/b/Africa apps, where we post a lot of resources and tutorials and how to guides, how to get started with various technologies, and not just on Bing Maps, but also on a host of other Microsoft technologies. Thank you very much.